Welcome back to Math Puzzle Channel. I'm Mr. Charles. In our previous video, we discussed various techniques for solving truth-lie logic puzzles. Today, we're going to put those methods into practice. We have prepared 5 questions for you, each varying in difficulty from the easiest to the most challenging. Your goal is to see if you can solve them within the given time limit, utilizing the strategies you've learned. To enhance convenience, the characters mentioned in the questions will be represented by their corresponding first initials. Are you ready? Let's get started. Question 1. Here is a conversation between A, B and C.
B is lying.
I'm not lying.
A is lying.
Only one of them is lying while others are telling the truth. So, who is lying? This question is similar to the example we discussed in the previous video, and we can use the same technique to tackle it. There are contradictory statements. A says that B is lying, while B says he is not lying. There must be one truth and one lie among these two statements. Considering that there is only one of them lying, the one lying must be either A or B. Consequently, C must be telling the truth. C says that A is lying, which provides us with the answer. Question 2. A bottle was broken. There are 4 kids involved and one of them broke it. Here is their conversation.
B broke the bottle.
C broke the bottle.
It wasn't me.
A didn't break the bottle.
Only one of them is telling the truth while others are lying. So, who is telling the truth? And who broke the bottle? Once again, we encounter a contradiction between the statements made by B and C. B says that C broke the bottle, while C says it wasn't her. In this situation, there must be one true and one false statement among their claims. Since only one of them can be telling the truth, it follows that either B or C is being truthful while others are lying. Consequently, we can infer that both A and D are lying. Considering D's false statement, we can conclude that A is the one who broke the bottle. By carefully analyzing their statements one by one, we can conclude that C is, in fact, telling the truth. Before we begin with question 3, let me provide you with a hint to help tackle the following problems. When the problem involves multiple statements about more than one individual, you do not need to deduce or make assumptions based on the order of the statements presented. Instead, you can first address the statements about one individual, followed by the statements about both, and finally handle the statements about either, or. This approach will make it easier to infer the answer. Let's proceed to question 3. Here is a conversation between A, B, C and D.
Both B and C are telling the truth.
A is telling the truth.
Either B or D is lying.
Either B or C is lying.
Only one of them is lying while others are telling the truth. So, who is lying? Just as mentioned earlier, it is suggested that we first handle the statement that pertains to only one individual, which is B's statement. B must be telling the truth. If B is lying, according to his false statement, it would imply that A is also lying. However, this contradicts the statement, only one of them is lying. Therefore, we can deduce that B is telling the truth. Based on B's true statement, it can be concluded that A is telling the truth. According to A's statement, we can determine that C is also telling the truth. Finally, regardless of considering D's statement or the constraint of only one of them is lying, it can be deduced that D is lying. Question 4. Here is a conversation between A, B, C, D and E.
Both B and C are lying.
Either A or E is telling the truth.
D is telling the truth.
Both C and E are lying.
Both A and D are lying.
Two of them are telling the truth while three of them are lying. So, who are lying? We will address C's statement first. Assuming that C is telling the truth, it would imply that D is also telling the truth. However, D's claim that both C and E are lying contradicts our assumption. Therefore, the assumption is invalid, and we can conclude that C is lying. It follows that D is also lying. Now that we have established that C is lying, D's statement is false only if E is telling the truth. E's true statement indicates that A is lying. Taking into consideration B's statement, we can deduce that B is telling the truth. In conclusion, A, C and D are lying. Question 5. Here is a conversation between A, B, C, D and E.
Either B or D is lying.
Both C and E are telling the truth.
Either D or E is lying.
Either A or C is lying.
Both A and D are telling the truth.
Two of them are lying while three of them are telling the truth. So, who are lying? There are no statements that solely pertain to one individual. Therefore, we will handle the statements containing the phrase both and first. Assuming that B is telling the truth, it would imply that both C and E are also telling the truth. If E is telling the truth, it would suggest that both A and D are telling the truth as well. However, this would result in a situation where all of them are telling the truth, which contradicts the constraint that two of them are lying while three of them are telling the truth. Hence, the assumption of B's truthfulness is invalid, and we can conclude that B is lying. E must also be telling the truth. Assuming that E is lying. Based on the constraint, 2 of them are lying while 3 of them are telling the truth. It would imply that A, C and D are telling the truth. This would align with E's statement, which claims that both A and D are telling the truth. This shows that E is telling the truth, contradicting our initial assumption that E is lying. So, the assumption is invalid, and we can conclude that E is telling the truth. It follows that both A and D are also telling the truth. Finally, regardless of considering C's statement or the constraint of 2 of them are lying, it can be deduced that C is lying. Therefore, the answer is B and C are lying. Thanks for joining me today to explore logic puzzles. Remember, there are often multiple ways to arrive at the correct answer in logic puzzles. I'd love to hear your unique approaches and see the creative strategies you used. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more math content. See you later.